Absolutely beautiful friends, and welcome to Mercury, where I share the beauty of travel with you. I'm glad to have you here on the channel. Now, in this particular video, I'm going to answer a question that has continued to be asked to me, and that is about, yes, I came to Spain as an American on the digital nomad visa, and I've shared with you the steps that we took to do that and how great our attorney is. But the question you had for me was, what are all of the things that I did way before we were coming here and that are really outside of just the paperwork? What were the steps that we took? So I want to answer that in this video today. I also just wanted to say to you guys, I have other clothing. I do wear real clothes, I promise. It just so happens that every time I'm ready to record a video for you guys, it's after I've come from the gym. So this jacket is getting all of its money's worth. Okay, so I made a list, and let's start at the top of what we did before we were actually coming to Spain outside of the paperwork for the digital nomad visa. Now, I do want to say that the visa guided a lot of the process at a particular point. Okay, so I just want to put that out there too, that a lot of what you're going to do is going to end up on visa timing. So that will come into play, okay? But before that, the very first thing that I did is I have an active prayer and meditation life, and it is the foundation of everything that I do. Because listen, I have the ability to just be delusional. I have the ability to just really be delusional. I think something is true, and then I can make up a whole story about how great or how bad it is, and I need to be in reality as much as is possible. So the first thing for me was when I started to get this inkling about leaving, which I've had since I was younger, but was this the right time? I had to sit down and I had to have some honest prayer and some honest communion with what I call a higher power. And the other thing that was important for me here and for my husband as well is that we both have spiritual mentors in our lives, is that we needed to talk to them. We needed to just say out loud what our plans were, what we were thinking, and not to have them tell us, yes, you can do this or not. We didn't need anybody's permission. That's not what it was about. But it was this place of honest communion with reality and the truth about what we were doing, because it was really important to me that I was making this move and taking this entire family in the direction of what we were running towards, not that we were running away from anything. And it's very easy to convince myself that life is so much better over yonder, So I really needed to spend a lot of time in prayer, which didn't mean, I wasn't sitting like in lotus position for 8 weeks or anything like that, but I just needed to get honest, which also meant for me, I needed to do a fair amount of journaling and writing and looking at what my motives were for what I was doing, not my intentions. I intend to have a good life, but my motive is I don't want to deal with life here, right? So I had to just be very clear on my motives. Now, the other thing about it, the prayer part for me was confirmation. There's this line in The Alchemist where he says that, when something is starting to blossom in us, it's because it's a seed that the universe had planted in us and it's beginning to blossom. And that's what my experience was with getting ready to make this move, is that something started to blossom in me and I needed confirmation. I needed to be very, very clear that I was not going to be shaking up our lives for absolutely no reason. So praying for confirmation, praying for, my prayer was, okay, universe, if this is not the right thing, please put barriers in the way that I understand if I have to push the barrier out of the way that I'm on the wrong track. So engaging the universe, engaging whatever you call a higher power, I think is something that's absolutely priceless. Now, the other side of prayer for me and for my husband that has been massively important is, one, to carry the weight of the decision that we were getting ready to make. Carrying the weight of grieving a country that we had lived in our entire lives and had become familiar with. Despite the fact that we wanted to leave it, we still had energy tied to this place, and it was what we knew. So like it, dislike it, when you know what you know, you know what you know. So to be able to handle the grief of that, to be able to handle the loss of family, because there was going to now be this distance that, it was not going to be accessible in the same way. The distance from not only our families, but our friends and our lives that we had created there. So this great idea of like moving to another country, saving money, all of these very cool and factual practicalities are very real. But there's also a massive emotional and energetic component that comes to doing something like this. So prayer was massive. And I knew that for me and my household as one of the adults, I needed to be able to have a solid, energetic, and spiritual grounding in navigating the weight of how these things were going to affect my husband and my daughter and the dog as well, not just myself. Like, how was I going to walk with them through the emotional changes that they were going to experience as well? So first and foremost, I can just tell you that prayer was the first thing that happened for me as things started to get going. And it is still a massive piece of my absolutely everyday life, right? Because it's great, but I'm just a delusional human being sometimes. Now, the next thing I did, because I really like simple and I like being in the reality as much as possible, is that I did some research and got some reality checks. So much like you're probably doing right now, I watched a ton of YouTube videos, a ton of YouTube videos about Spain and what is it like to live in Spain and what is it like to work in Spain, especially as an American. You know, what's the experience happening there? I joined Facebook groups, all the Facebook groups. I'm sorry for some of y'all who had me in your groups for like 8 weeks and I made you crazy. I joined all the Facebook groups because I had all the questions and people had already been asking these, and I wanted to go in the direction of moving towards Spain, right? I wanted to move in the direction that I wanted to go. And then eventually I left some of those Facebook groups that I probably took hostage with all of my questions. I hope I didn't. I hope I was better. And I moved into Facebook groups that were specifically in Seville, since that's where we had decided to go, because I needed to really understand, what is this? What does life actually look like outside of my dream, outside of the vision? You know, what can my everyday life look like? You know, am I going to just spend every day sitting at the Expat coffee shop? No, I'm not. If we're making an actual move here, I may be moving into a place or a neighborhood where majority of the people do not speak English. Now, granted, I speak Spanish, but my husband doesn't speak Spanish. My daughter speaks beautiful Spanish, but it's not as strong as mine. So what's the reality of what this is going to be like? I run an online business. We're digital nomads. Where we're going to have internet service, right? So we just had to get to the nitty gritty of like, what is this beyond the delusion? Now, the other part of that reality check for us was actually committing to and going on the scouting trip to Seville, right? Because we needed to put our bodies in the city, and we needed to see what it felt like to be here. And you can't do that with a weekend trip. For us, we couldn't do that for a weekend trip. So we planned for, December of 2022 to come here, and we didn't cancel our clients. We didn't change our work schedules besides to travel on the plane, because we were like, we need to go and live in this place like we're going to be living and working and having our being, so we can see what it is, right? So those are in the research and like reality check section of what we were doing. That's exactly a part of the planning trip, because there was no need to be kicking up all of the dust, getting ready for grief, getting ready for paperwork out of the wazoo, getting ready to make a financial plan for a place we didn't really want to live in. You know what I mean? Now, beyond that, when we came back from the scouting trip and it was like, okay, yes, this is the deal. Then we started the legal preparations, and this really set the process for everything else that we were going to do outside of the paperwork, because that visa, the process really dictates your timing. You got to have documents that are done between this time, and then they've got to be submitted at this time, or you got to go get this document and it's going to take 12 weeks for it to get back. So once you decide, the visa process will really decide so much more about how you're going to get things done. So then we reached out to Marina, our attorney, and her team, and they were fantastic. I know if you've been on this channel before, you've heard me rave about her, and it's because they have been fantastic since we got here. We're 2.5 years in now. absolutely brilliant. So her link's in the description box down below if you need some attorney help, and you get a free consultation and a little discount if you use my link. So we contacted Marina and started to begin the visa prep process. So we learned what documents of proof we needed, the timing that we were going to need things, what kind of income were we going to have to show, our housing, our insurance. We learned all of those things that we were going to need to provide as we were getting essentially over to Spain. And then we also made a decision at that time with Marina if we were going to apply out of country and we could take more time and do the rest of the steps I'm going to tell you about, or if we were going to apply in country. Now, the difference on the digital nomad visa is that if we had applied out of country, our visa would have been good for a year. So we could have applied here in the States and it would have been good for a year. Or we could apply in Spain digitally and get our visa for 3 years. And that sounded like a better option for us. We were like, we do not want to gather all of this paperwork again in a year. We don't want to do that, right? And it was going to be so much of a big deal to move that we were like, let's go, we're set, we're ready to do that. So we found out the process and the timing from Marina, and then that set up everything else. From there, we got the logistics, documents and logistics. First of all, we made sure our passports and driver's licenses and all those personal documents were fresh and up to date, right? In case you can't even apply for the visa if your passport's going to run out in a year or something like that. So we made sure all of our documents, the documents for the kids, were good to go, and what we were going to need to do to get Brody, our dog, his passport as well, which I have a whole other video on that if you're curious, because we brought a big old 90-pound dog with us as well. Then we started to look at, okay, how are we going to handle the mail? What are we going to do with our U.S. mail? Because we're still going to have mail coming here. Not to mention, we had a child who was going to want to go to college in the United States. So we needed to also have some address for that to work out. Now, it happened for us. We didn't need to use a virtual mailbox service to handle all of our U.S. mail because we had family that was here and they said that they were okay with taking that on. We have kept it open with them and said, if this ever changes and you don't want our mail coming there, because they send you 10,000 get your eggs cheaper ads or whatever, that we would change to a virtual mailbox system. So we handled the mail situation up front in getting ready for it, which meant that we were also starting to gather the paperwork we were going to need to be able to not only forward our mail, but change our address as we were going to get ready to sell the house. So those kind of came together. Then we started to research storage versus selling things, right? Because we were like, okay, how much do we want to pay a month in a storage unit, i.e. how much do we really want to keep? So for us, it whittled down to we needed a mid-sized storage unit, mostly because we had some bigger things that were important to put in there. And the rest we started to sell. We started to downsize things. Facebook Market, I feel like my neighbors probably thought I was running a drug deal or something like that because these people were coming to the house at all hours of the day and night. And this lady's walking out under the night of, the shade of night with plants. She's like, I got these pothos plants, whatever. So we're selling off stuff just left and right and left and right and left and right. And in the meantime there, we also contacted our realtor because we needed to have her tell us and start evaluating our house so that it was in top shape so that we could get top dollar when we were going to sell it. And some of those things we needed to plan for time. Did we need to repaint every single wall in the house? Our house was in really good shape. There were a couple things that needed to be done to make it better. There was going to have to be surveys and there was going to have to be not investigations. There was going to need to inspections that were going to need to be done to be able to list the house and get it ready to be sold. So we started taking on that as part of the logistics as well. Now, something else that we did is first of all, we needed to choose how our daughter was going to be going to school. She was going to be in her last few years of high school. She was going in as a sophomore. So when we were on our scouting trip, we also went to visit a couple high schools that were here. We visited an international high school where there was a mix between Spanish, English, and Chinese also being taught, as well as the additional language, and to see, was this going to be the right kind of fit for her? And then we talked to her. we were like, she was started high school after the COVID kids. So we asked her, do you want to go in person or would you like to go online? And what are the benefits of each? And what she ended up choosing was that she wanted to go to school online because she had the option to work more independently and also to finish her studies earlier. And two, in Spain, she would be able to join a language center to be studying Japanese, Chinese, and then she studies German on her own as well. So we ended up doing research about an online high school that was accredited. She could get a diploma from, and everything was going to work out just fine so that she could also get into the college of her choice. So we ended up having her go to IVLA, and I'll put a link to them down below, and it has been a great investment. And she did, in fact, she's going to end up finishing early and then moving on to college. So it was really good. She got to work at her own pace, and it was just such a lovely experience. And then when she was taking her backpack and leaving and going out of this house here in Spain to the Japanese center, she was going to learn Japanese. And then once a week they were doing kimonos, and then they were doing stitching, and then they were doing calligraphy. And that was not only not financially accessible in the States, but that kind of opportunity in terms of timing and how rigorous her schooling was, it just wasn't an option. So this was brilliant. That said, from there, we needed to get the transcripts from her US high school into the hands of the online school and let them know when we would be switching over so that they could set up her curriculum and start her class. So that's what we did in the section of like the logistics and getting the documents ready so that we could start to prep. Now, we had financial preparation. Of course. After the scouting trip, we had to create the full financial plan of how we were going to do this, what we wanted the outcome of our financial life to look like as well. So we sat down and we made a full list of, first of all, everything that we had, all of the money. Where does all of our money go? In income, expenses, debts, what and where is everything. Then we made another list of, okay, what are all of the expenses that we're going to incur making this move? So we sat down with the Excel sheet, full financial transparency about everything, and made our financial plan of what we were going to do. And this took, we took about a week to sit down and really get through everything. And we always budget high for things. So that way, if it comes out less, we're like, woo, So we budgeted high for absolutely everything. But once we saw our financial plan and things were ticking along with the visa as well, and we could start to move towards speeding more things up as money was coming in from the things that we were selling. We were paying off anything that was a debt, or we were paying forward on bills that we knew we were going to need to take care of, so we just didn't have the load on us. We canceled memberships and subscriptions that we weren't going to need anymore and let those things go. We sold the vehicles. We sold all the vehicles. Everybody in the house had a vehicle. So we sold those off. We cut off the insurance. We let all of that go. We used that money to pay debt and to go into our pot to be able to make this move as well. So once we had our plan together financially and things were going along with the visa, then we made the plan to sell the house. And it was the most brilliant thing ever, because we finally got to the time where it was time to list the house to sell it. Our realtor came in, we listed the house at 6 a.m. and that house was off the market ready to sell by 6 p.m. at over $40,000 of what our asking price was. So when you list that house, it may go more quickly than you think. Here's number one thing that I want you to know though. If you are planning to move to Spain and you are going to sell your house, or you live on a boat, or whatever your domicile is that you want to sell, but particularly a house, you want to not sell your house until after June of the particular year that you're in, because if not, you have to declare those capital gains in Spain as well on your taxes. So, and you want to see a tax attorney so you can get all that information, but people get caught up in capital gains, and Spain will absolutely come for their tax money, right? And they will deny your visa if you've got problems going on with the tax situation. So just keep that in mind. And if you're talking to Marina, she can help you with all of that as well. Now, the last thing we really did in our financial prep per se is that we made sure that we had international friendly banking. So we have Wise and we have Revolut, which are international banking services, but then we also had Ally online banking, and I used Ally before because I had access to a high yield savings account, which I highly suggest you have a high yield savings account so you can let your money make money. No couch potato money. Money that is not moving is money that is no good. So those are some options for you, and I'll make sure that I put some links to those in the description box down below. Okay, so now as things really sped up and it was time and the house was listed, we went on ahead when we listed the house, not realizing it was going to be sold in the same day, right? But the day that we listed the house, we went on ahead and we chose an Airbnb, and we reached out to them because they had it listed short term, but we were like, we need it for, a couple months before we're going to be able to leave. We set that up with them, and we went ahead and secured that Airbnb so that we could go into it as soon as the house sold. And it worked out just perfectly that it sold in the same day because we were able to just move our things over after we did all of the checks and got to closing. Now, at the same time, when we booked that Airbnb, we went on ahead and booked our Airbnb for Spain as well, because in between there, Marina had come back and said, yep, this is all the paperwork that we need. We'll get ready to submit it when you come to Spain digitally, and all should be well. So we had booked the Airbnb in the United States, and we also booked the Airbnb in Spain. From that time, between the closing and being in the Airbnb, we transitioned everything. Right? We cleared out the whole rest of the house. We put the things in storage. We sold the rest of the things, and we let the official downsize happen. We also, at this time, once we got into the Airbnb, the house was sold, we went to visit family, because we knew we were going to need to get settled. We weren't going to be going back and forth. Plane tickets are about $1,500 a piece from the US to Sevilla, where we're at, just a little bit less if you're going to Madrid. So we knew we weren't really going to be doing a lot of back and forth. So we went to visit family and spend time with them and say hi and say goodbye and, just love on them a little and let them love on us. We also, in the time that we were in the Airbnb, the one thing you're going to have to do as an American is you've got to get your NIE in the United States, wherever your consulate is at. So we had budgeted in our financial plan to fly to LA, because it was LA for us at the consulate, to do our NIE appointments. So we had the flight, we had an Airbnb, and then we came back, and that was the end of it. Now, the very last thing that we did was when we got the full, okay, house sold, cars gone, paperwork accepted, is we bought our flights to Spain. And that was it. Then we started putting our stuff that we were actually taking with us into our 15 suitcases, because we moved over here with 15 suitcases. And we budgeted for the price of every single one of those extra suitcases to come on the flight with us. And when they gave us the green light, we went ahead and we bought those flights and those tickets, and we prepaid for all of our luggage as well. And then the day and the time came, it was time to get on the flight. So we had our friends at first keep Brody, because he needed to finish healing from a surgery that he had had. So he wasn't quite ready to be able to board the flight with us. And we were flying at a time where he couldn't fly anyways. But we had our friends keep him. He was living his best life. We booked flights we hopped our flights to Spain, and we got here into the Airbnb that we booked with all 15 of our suitcases. None of them were broken into. They all got here. And that was the process we took of all of the things that we did before we got to Spain. Okay, this has been a little bit of a long video. 24 minutes I feel like is a long time, but I'm hoping that what I said here makes a little bit of sense to you and you're going, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. I'm also going to boil this down into a checklist that you can just click in the description box down below and get so that you can check it off for yourself. And if you have questions or you need suggestions, absolutely put it in the comment section down below. If you're wondering how to move here with a dog, if you're wondering, you know, if you happen to be a person of color who's thinking about coming to Spain, I've got another video you can watch about what it's like to be a person of color in Spain, and check that out. And if there's something else you really are curious to know about, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'm happy to make a video to help explain my experience with that here in Spain. All right, check out these videos at the end, and I will see you next time. Bye.